With war comes brutality, and this story is graphic. April 29th is the 73rd anniversary of the liberation of Dachau.
And a well-known local retired football coach played a key role. Dachau was one of the first of many concentration camps established by Germany's Nazi regime, and tens of thousands died there. But as the years wear on, concern grows that the Holocaust will be all but forgotten. For a Franklin man who was one of the first U.S. soldiers to arrive at the camp as a liberator, that's something he never wants to see happen again. Jimmy Gentry of Franklin was 19 years old when he liberated Dachau. Now at 92, he vividly recalls what he saw so the rest of the world doesn't forget. News 4's Alan Frio with an incredible story of a mid-state man who was a witness to the Holocaust.
There I am after the war.
Albums filled with photos of Jimmy Gentry's World War II years in the 42nd Infantry. Some pictures bring back fond memories.
That's my buddies.
But as he turns the pages to the unit's last days before Germany's surrender, he grows more somber.
That's some of the prisoners there.
During those final days, the 42nd had one last mission.
The route of their advance headed directly toward the most famous of all German horror prisons, the concentration camp of Dachau.
See, here's the dead one right here. They were laying around just like trash.
As Jimmy scours the photos of prisoners at Dachau, decades have not dimmed his memory of what he witnessed that horrifying day in April 1945. What he smelled also evokes particular memories.
The smell was horrible. We thought, golly, what is this? You know, and somebody suggested that the Germans were using some kind of poisonous gas.
The pungent odor was Zyklon B gas to kill the prisoners. It was an overwhelming sight for this 19-year-old soldier from Franklin to take in.
Somebody said, this is a concentration camp. That's the first time I heard the word. We had been in combat for quite a while, so we already knew what death was and see, the horrors of war. But we didn't understand why all these pitiful people were there. Just nothing skin and bones.
As Jimmy and his platoon made their way through the camp, the horrors got worse. Hundreds of human beings stacked on top of one another.
These burning them just like wood when we got there. If we had been, say, a couple of days later, I wouldn't be telling this, because they'd be all gone.
But as this all was unfolding before him, he encountered a prisoner who approached him and gave him a box.
So I opened the box, and inside the box was 5 or 6 cigarette butts that he had saved. That was his treasure. That's all he had. He gave them to me. He had no other way to say thank you, except I'll give you my cigarettes.
When Jimmy came back to Franklin, he became a football coach at Battleground, Franklin High School, and later at Brentwood Academy. It was at Brentwood's practice field 30 years after the war that an astonishing incident happened. An elderly man slowly made his way to Jimmy on the field.
Oh gosh, I broke down. I said, I know who it is. And he came over and we just embraced one another, and both of us were crying by then. He's the man that wanted me to furnish me with the cigarettes because I didn't have any. That's the same man. That's a miracle.
For decades, Jimmy was silent about what he saw until that same man urged him to tell his story.
He said, you know, if you don't tell it, people will say it didn't happen. And if they say it didn't happen enough, then everybody will believe it never happened.
He's an amazing man. And, you know, Jimmy has traveled from California to Pennsylvania talking to various groups about what he saw that day. And he particularly likes to speak to younger children because they tend to forget. And there's an interesting poll out released about 2 weeks ago that shows 4 out of 6 millennials aren't even aware of the Holocaust.
I mean, that was such an incredibly dark time in world history, but as you mentioned, such an important story to keep alive and keep telling.
And you know what they say about history, if you forget it, you're doomed to repeat it.
That's right, that's right. Alan Frio, powerful images, powerful story. Thank you.
Good story.